Welcome back. I'm Chris Morin with HVAC Pro Blog, and this month I'm excited to present something that I recorded for my Patreon members 1 year ago. Last August, I was able to explain some of the details for ACA Manual H heat pump balance points. In that training, we actually walked through heat pump sizing considerations, the difference between supplemental and emergency heat, how we apply this to a dual fuel source heat pump, right? So when we put it on, let's say, a gas furnace, what the two different balance points are, and we really focused on comfort balance points and how to come up with that number. And then, of course, what break-even COP is for natural gas, oil, and propane. I hope you enjoy the training. Equipment selection. So this is out of ACA Manual S, not Manual H. But what the main point here is we don't want contractors oversizing heat pumps for the heating season and ignoring the effects on cooling, okay? Because obviously when we talk about balance points, if you oversize a heat pump, you're gonna drive that balance point down and you think it's gonna be a good thing, right? Because you're gonna run the heat pump more often than, let's say, your oil or your propane or electric resistance, right? So everybody thinks, well, I'll just get the biggest heat pump I can, and since it's variable speed, everything's fine, which is definitely not the case. So if you're in a mild winter or has a big latent cooling load with a single speed heat pump, you're actually going to be running all of these equipment selection scenarios based on air conditioning. So you're going to select it based on your cooling load, and the max oversizing you can be on a single speed heat pump is 115%. Of course, multi-stage you're allowed to go to 120%, and variable speed is 130%. So there are some situations where, being in the Northeast, because a lot of my Patreon members are out of the Northeast here, that this could apply to you, where you could oversize a variable speed heat pump by 130%. Of course, you need to meet at least 90% of the total load. This is really important, especially when you have zoned aired ducted systems, right? So if you're going to zone out a system, of course you can undersize slightly because you're not going to have all zones on at the same time, typically in most New England homes. So a lot of people undersize those systems. You have to be at least 90% of the total. Of course, you need to meet at least 100% of the latent capacity. You never want to undersize. It's a cardinal sin to undersize on the latent side of a heat pump for cooling. And of course, you don't want to go over 150% of that latent capacity. A lot of the areas in the Northeast really go by scenario B, because we have at least 2-to-1 heating degree days versus cooling degree days. So in this instance, you're actually only allowed to oversize by 15,000 BTUs. So of the total load on the cooling side. So if your total load comes out to 3 tons in cooling, you can go 15,000 BTUs over that 3 tons. Of course, this is after you re-rate your equipment based on your design conditions. So inside and outside design conditions. So you're selecting based on your cooling load. That's the maximum you can oversize. Very important before we get into balance points here. So let's talk about the balance point for comfort. This probably, the further you go north, this comes into play most often before you get into the other balance point, which would be break-even COP, which is where we run based on the cost of fuel, okay? So on the comfort side, what you typically do is run your heat loss, right? And you're gonna mark that out. In this case, our heat loss design temperature was at 5 degrees. And we just rounded up. We'll say very simply, you at 5 degrees needed 80,000 BTUs. Now, since heat loss in a home is lineal, meaning it's directly proportional based on temperature, you can draw a dot at 65 degrees and know that you need 0 BTUs to heat the house. Most people use 65 where they shut that heat off. You may want to go to 70 if it's an older couple, something along those lines. And you would just draw a linear line from 80,000 BTUs down to 65. So you can see that heat loss, as it gets warmer, the heat needed to heat the home is less, right? Pretty simple. Then what we're gonna do is superimpose and this is a standard heat pump here, non-variable speed or non-cold climate, just a standard heat pump. You can see that defrosting once you get to around 40 degrees. So this is probably, let's say, a 3 or 4 ton heat pump. And as you get below 40 degrees, you can see the hill gets a little steeper, right, on the derating of your heat output. So the colder it gets outside, the less heat you're going to get out of a standard heat pump. So in this instance right here, you can see on this, actually this is a pretty large system. You can see you get about 70,000 BTUs at 65 degrees. So this is probably a little over a 5-ton system, all right? But when you get down to 5 degrees, you're only getting about 24,000 BTUs out of this system. And where they cross will actually be your balance point, right? So at the temperature that those lines cross is where you should, based on comfort, switch over from heat pump to another fuel source, whatever your other source is. Could be electric resistance, that's when you kick on your supplemental heat. Could be, let's say, a heat pump sitting on top of a furnace. It could be a boiler. There's all kinds of options for secondary heating sources, right? So this is typically supplemental in the fact that you would run your heat pump first, then switch over, okay? Of course, when you start sizing supplemental heat, you don't size it for 100% of the heat loss. That's emergency heat. You size for the difference needed at your design temperatures. So if my design temperature here was 5 degrees and I only get 20, we'll round up, let's say 25,000 BTUs, and I need 80, then the difference there would be 55,000 BTUs, right? Nope. Yeah, 55,000 BTUs, right? So it's that orange line difference. That's the supplemental heat needed. Now, of course, if you're going to use electric resistance, you would just divide the BTUs needed by 3412, and you would get the kW. So this is probably going to be like a 19 kW or 20 kW electric resistance heater that's needed on that heat pump, okay? So really, really easy math when you get to electric resistance there. All right, so let's talk about a cold climate heat pump. You can see very little curve here. So a cold climate heat pump was actually coined, that term was coined by Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership, NEEP. They actually will rate heat pumps based on the submitted data from manufacturers to say if it's a cold climate heat pump, meaning it gets 100% capacity at 5 degrees. So you can see the curve, so to speak, is flat all the way to 5, and then it starts to derate below 5 for a cold climate heat pump. So this particular one is a 4-ton model made by a manufacturer. And you can see here, you get about 54,000 BTUs all the way across down to 5. And now the temperature, instead of it being on that previous screen, I'm just going to kick back so you can see, you would have to switch over at about 36 degrees with a non-cold climate heat pump in this example. With the same heat loss with a cold climate heat pump, we can run it down to about 24 degrees. Now that is a huge difference. It only seems like 10 degrees, but the number of run hours in a winter between 24 and 36 degrees is huge in the Northeast, okay? A lot of run hours. So if you're able to run a heat pump instead of a less efficient fuel source at those temperatures, you're gonna save a lot more money, okay? So in this example here, I can run that down to 24 degrees. That's where my comfort balance point is. I would have to turn on another fuel source. And the amount of heat I need at 5 degrees is only about 15,000 BTUs, right? Instead of that previous 55,000 BTUs. So that's a huge difference in supplemental heat needs. Of course, you have to take into account when you install cold climate heat pumps, the electrical usage and the needs for that larger condenser that's going to use more power at those colder temperatures, okay? So there are some other pieces that you have to take into account outside of just how low can I run my heat pump when you install and select that equipment, okay? Of course, if you're sizing emergency heat, so let's say you only have a heat pump, it's ducted, it's made by a whatever manufacturer, unitary manufacturer, even if it's cold climate, if you have emergency heat, this means when your heat pump's off, you need to be able to make up 100% of the heat loss. Emergency and supplemental are two different things. I used to always get confused as a technician because those old heat pump thermostats, if you guys remember, you could flip it over to supplemental or flip it over to emergency. Really drives that meter usage up. So when you size emergency heat, it's 100% of the heat loss, all right? So I would have to size, let's say, electric resistance heaters for the needs of 80,000 BTUs. Of course, I really hope there's multiple stages to those, otherwise your electric bill's gonna be through the roof, all right? So emergency heat and supplemental, two different things. Of course, if we're talking about dual fuel systems, typically your heat pump, you're going to run down to what we're going to call the break-even COP, and that's what I'm going to spend the rest of this morning on, the next 20 minutes, I would say, on calculating the break-even COP for different fuel sources. But remember, whatever that other fuel source is, typically is not dependent on outdoor temperature for heat output, right? So if you have an oil boiler or a gas furnace or propane boiler or whatever it is, at minimal, and we're not going to say your intake air is going to affect much of the BTU output here. Of course, there's a minor effect. You can lose a couple of percent, but that curve is typically flat based on outdoor temperature, right? So your furnace capacity for an 80,000 BTU furnace is always 80,000 BTUs, no matter what it is outside, okay? So of course, here in this instance, I'm going to have to, based on my heat loss, still switch over to the other fuel source at 24 degrees based on comfort. But what if it's cheaper to run my natural gas at a warmer temperature, right? You don't want to run the heat pump if it costs you more money, if you have an efficient other source of fuel. So that's where you get into what's called break-even COP, all right? Now, when to switch over based on comfort is based on that diagram. And of course, that's going to change for every heat pump that you install based on the heat loss of that house and what the other fuel source is, right? The break-even COP is very dependent on the cost of fuel and the COP of the condenser, right? So every single installation is different, and when the prices change, it's different. So this is a very dynamic calculation. Of course, it's simple math, but it's a lot of math, which is why I'm wearing my glasses today. So that way I can read the numbers on the screen. All right, so I did a little bit of research ahead of this month for you guys, just so you know, we average, and this is in Massachusetts, that's where I live, we average 24 cents a kW delivered. So this is your total bill divided by the number of kWh that you used. So it includes delivery fees and charges for solar, you know, and all the different pieces that are in there for renewable sources, all the stuff that, let's say, National Grid or Eversource charges, all right? So electric is averaging 24 cents a kW in my area. Of course, if the electric costs are lower, then we're gonna drive down the break-even COP because it's cheaper to run your heat pump. If the electric cost is higher, typically your break-even COP is gonna be a little bit higher temperature, okay? So what I always start with is the highest cost here. Of course, if you work with a lot of municipal electric providers, then the cost per therm delivered is, per kWh delivered is typically less. So therefore your break-even COP may be lower, and it's better to install a heat pump instead of another fuel source. So the average cost for natural gas right now is actually $1.38 per therm. Okay, this can vary widely. If you don't use a lot of gas currently, your cost per therm actually might be higher because you have a minimum charge on your bill for delivery. If you use a ton of gas, like unfortunately my house, I had that old Victorian I was talking about at the beginning of the presentation, one pipe steam. I repacked all the valves. Thing runs as efficient as you can. You know, new boiler probably 5 years ago. I use a ton of gas still. So because I use a lot of therms, my average is typically what the usual cost is. So right now, since I'm not using my heating and I'm just using hot water for natural gas, my cost per therm is typically a little bit higher than this because I'm not using that other tier, okay, which it drops the cost down. So usually in Massachusetts, about $1.38 per therm for natural gas. Oil, the average, and I took a look at this off of you have to forgive me, it's a Massachusetts agency website where they give you monthly the average cost for oil and propane, the low and the high for all of the audited companies in Massachusetts. Our consumer affairs department really monitors these to make sure there's no price gouging. So the average cost for oil right now is $2.14 a gallon, and the average cost for propane is $2.66 a gallon, which actually isn't bad, okay? But when you do these calculations, I think you're gonna find what you may already know about these fuel sources and break-even COPs. So I'm gonna walk through the first one and just explain a little bit with the math. So for natural gas, you'll notice these equations stay the same. What you need to know is we're gonna actually, there's 1 million BTUs per 1,000 cubic feet. But what you need to do is turn this into, from therms into cubic feet, from cubic feet into therms. So you need to know that there's 10.37 therms per 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas, okay? So that's what's gonna give you the match on the top and the bottom, you have to convert cubic feet to BTUs, therms. So in this example here, the 3414 per BTUs per hour is what is in 1 kWh. So you can see that that matches on the top. That 3414 is going to stay the same because we're using electric heat pump across the board here to figure out COP. You need to plug in your cost per kWh and your cost per 1,000 cubic feet, which we're going to have to convert off of our bill from therms, times the constant of 0.90 times the steady state efficiency of the furnace or boiler that we're going to be installing in order to get our break-even COP. Okay, so as an example here, I'm going to plug this in based on today's fuel costs so you know what that break-even COP is for a 96% furnace or boiler. So you can see we plugged in the 24 cents per kW, $1.38 per therm for natural gas. We have to multiply that by 10.37 therms to get thousands of cubic feet. So that way we can have the correct translation in the math equation here. And when we do all of this math out, the break-even COP is 4.3. Seems really, really high, but when you have really efficient heat pumps, it's not as high as you would think, okay? And I'm gonna show you that. We're gonna pull that off of a chart here later. So we're gonna do the same thing for oil here. Where oil, really easy. You get charged per gallon, and there's 138,000 BTUs of heat in 1 gallon of fuel. So really simple. We can plug those numbers in. And when you do that math all the way across here, I used an 87% oil boiler, let's say, or furnace. That's probably the highest you can get without it condensing. You get a break-even COP right now of 3.5. And this is because oil costs are low, $2.14 per gallon, and electric costs are high in Massachusetts, 24 cents a kW. Typically, the break-even COP in the middle of winter, because fuel costs usually go up here in the Northeast for oil and electric, pretty much stays standard over the last 5 years. That break-even COP starts to go down, meaning you can run your heat pump to colder temperatures and still be more efficient, all right? But currently it's 3.5. So if you were to fill up your oil today, which most people try to do over the summertime in order to get the best price, they're looking for a break-even COP of 3.5 so they don't lose money. The last one here we're gonna walk through is propane. So for propane, you need to know there's 27.8 gallons of propane for 1,000 cubic feet of propane gas, right? So you're gonna have to have that math on the bottom side of that second part of the equation, $2.66 per gallon times 27.8 gallons in order to get back to cubic feet. And then there's 91,502 BTUs per gallon of propane gas, right? So a couple of pieces of information you need to know for the math here. What I'm doing for you though is coming up with all these COPs, so that way you can just know the COP for August, all right? Really simple. But that's how you'd have to go back and plug in the current costs in order to get today's COP. Let's say if you watch this recording in December, all right? So you do all this math and you end up, even with a 96% propane boiler or furnace, at a 0.07 COP. And I'm going to show you what that means on the chart. But if you guys didn't know, coefficient of performance of electric resistance heat is 1, all right? So it's cheaper currently to run electric resistance heat than it is to run your propane gas furnace or boiler. It's pretty sad. But that's because of the cost of fuel, all right? And that's at $2.66. I have seen that well above $3 or $4 before in the past. All right, so in order to get the COP of your heat pumps, you're gonna have to know a little bit more math because most manufacturers don't publish COP, even the one that I work for. So you need to know your energy out, your BTUs per hour, and you divide that by energy in, which is watt usage, right? So they do publish BTUs and watt usage based at certain temperatures. You need to know that there's 1 BTU for every 0.293 watts. So you need to multiply your BTUs times 0.293 to convert that to watts, so you can then figure out COP. All right, really, really easy here. So it is simple math, and when you walk through this, I'm just gonna move my video here so you guys can see the charts. You can see on my left-hand side was the break-even COPs that we calculated, and we kept manufacturers out of this, but this is all the data from engineering manual for a cold climate 8-zone mini split. All right, so it's a 4-ton model, And since it's cold climate, in this model, you get 54,000 BTUs all the way to 5 degrees or slightly more than that. And then it starts to derate, okay? So you can see my max BTUs and my watt usage is what's pulled based on my design temperatures of 70 degrees inside, okay? Really, really important there. So we do, or most manufacturers do publish it at other indoor temperatures. You wanna make sure you're pulling it for your design temperature. And you know what? A lot of manufacturers these days are actually giving you software to do this for you. Unfortunately, the software doesn't give you all the different temperatures. It's just your design temperatures that you plug in. So you can know the COP, your design temperature. You don't know what it is at 55 or 50 or 47 or 17, okay? So you can see here, I just pulled it right out, and then on an Excel document, just added a couple more lines. So we have our max BTU output, and we have our wattage. We need to multiply BTUs times 0.293 to get it to watts, right? And then we can divide watts by watts in order to get COP. So in this example here, the most efficient, and you know, everybody knows this, a heat pump as you run at warmer temperatures has a much higher COP. So the most efficient this system's rated is at 60 degrees when you only use 2,954 watts and get 54,000 BTUs, right? So when you divide 15,822, which is converted BTUs to watts, by 2,954, you end up with 5.36 COP. Really, really high, but that's because it's 60 degrees out. You go down to the other extreme, all the way down the bottom, you can get 42,632 BTUs at negative 13. That's awesome. That's a lot of BTUs, but it's going to use about 3 times or 2.5 times the energy in order to do that. So you have to actually using 5,908 watts. So when you break that out and you end up with COP, it's only a 2.11 COP, okay? So obviously much more efficient at warmer temperatures, much less efficient at colder temperatures. But remember, our break-even COP for natural gas was 4.3 based on today's fuel costs. So I could actually run my heat pump, my cold climate heat pump, and this is a big model here. This is a 4-ton model. I could run that all the way down to about 48 degrees and still use less money to heat my house with a heat pump than natural gas that's 96% efficient, I think, or 97%, whatever it was in the equation before, okay? So today's prices for that particular heat pump, that particular condenser, you're looking at about 48 degrees, okay? Oil, of course, because it's a lower break-even COP, I can run it to colder temperatures. So you can see for that one, I can actually run it down to about 27 degrees, all right? So 27 degrees is about a break-even based on really low fuel costs in oil and pretty high fuel costs for electric right now. And then, of course, because my break-even COP for propane is at 0.07, as long as I'm comfortable, it is much less cost for the homeowner to run their heat pump instead of a propane furnace or boiler, all right? So you're looking at 48 degrees for natural gas with an 8-zone, 4-ton cold climate heat pump, about 27 degrees for oil, and as low as you can possibly go with propane, all right? Which I think most people probably knew that already because of the cost of propane. So remember that these are at today's fuel prices, and it's for this particular condenser. If I was to put in a much more efficient single zone, 1-ton cold climate heat pump, let's say wall mount variable speed heat pump, you're gonna have higher COPs based on those outdoor design temperatures. And if I can heat the majority of the house with just one-to-one heat pump, you're gonna be able to run it much colder than you would an 8-zone heat pump, let's say, because these ratings are with all 8 zones connected, okay, and operating. So really, really important. You have to look at the engineering data for each heat pump when you do this calculation. I know it's a little bit of math, but it really will go a long way in meeting expectations when you talk about fuel savings with a homeowner and you're installing a cold climate heat pump to offset fuel savings. Because if they don't know and they're running their heat pump instead of their oil furnace at, let's say, 17 or 5 or -3 when it's February here in Massachusetts, their electric bill is going to be much higher than they expected, and they're probably going to call you. All right, I've been through it, and hopefully you guys can learn from my mistakes. So you got to do the math in order to know, and it is dynamic. It does change daily sometimes. And if you have a smart homeowner, they might do it on their own. Unfortunately, I haven't found a good app for that. If you guys know one, certainly shoot it over. Some manufacturers, if you install a ducted piece of equipment and you put a communicating heat pump with a communicating furnace, some manufacturers actually do this math for you in their thermostat and they auto change it over. You just plug in the fuel costs and it takes care of it for you. Most controls, when you're using two different manufacturers, let's say a manufacturer that makes ductless and a manufacturer that is a unitary manufacturer that is not integrated, then it doesn't do it for you. You have to know when to switch it over. You can set that temperature in, let's say, a mobile app or something like that, and it'll auto switch over at the temperature you say. It doesn't know that temperature though. You still have to do this math to know when to switch it. All right. So what'd you think? Did you learn something about heat pump balance points? Hopefully you're considering joining my Patreon page in the link below. If you're looking for the most up-to-date training and unique content that you actually have input in, you definitely want to sign up. Thanks again for joining me this month at HVAC Pro Blog, where we provide advice for residential system design, quality installation, and system diagnosis. We'll see you soon.